The dog isn't barking, it isn't growling, it just sits, turns its body slightly to the side, and stares at the wall behind you. Your guest is still talking, still smiling. Technically, nothing happened, but your dog already made its decision. You noticed, maybe you didn't care, or you even apologized to your guest. It's usually so friendly. But underneath that apology, a small voice inside you said, "Yeah, I noticed that too. This isn't a random thing, and it isn't magic either." What your dog did in those first few seconds is a reading system built over thousands of years. And the science behind it is far more specific than most people think. And if you sit with it long enough, a little unsettling too. Here's the starting point. Your dog doesn't read people the way you do. You look at someone's face, their expression. You listen to what they're saying, how they're saying it, whether their smile is real. Your dog examines all of that too. But last, there are more important things for your dog to check first. The first thing it checks is the body, not the face. The whole body. How a person shifts their weight as they walk through the door, whether their hands hang loose at their sides or tight, whether they walk toward your dog in a straight line or in a wide arc. These aren't things you consciously notice in those first seconds, but your dog barely notices anything else. You could almost say it's the only thing it focuses on. At the same time, not after, but at the exact same moment, it's also processing scent data you can't perceive. If a person is tense, suppressing something, or carrying a strain they haven't yet put a name to, their body chemistry changes. Cortisol, adrenaline, compounds that produce a measurable, a detectable scent. Your dog is reading this in real time, the same way you read the face of someone sitting across from you. And there's a third channel, one most people miss entirely. Your dog is watching you. It's been watching you for years. It knows exactly how your shoulders drop when you relax around someone. It knows the micro tension in your jaw when something feels off, but you're trying to be polite. When a stranger walks in, your dog isn't just reading the stranger. It's also reading what you do the exact moment that stranger walks in. Don't you think it's fascinating how a dog can be the most attuned to the dynamics in the room? Three channels: body language, scent, your reaction, all firing at once, all processed in the first 3 seconds before you even say hello. That's why it looks like instinct, but it isn't instinct. It's a system. And when I started reading the research on this system, it turned out to be capable of something I didn't expect. It can detect lies. Not in the ways you might first think. Not through some mystical sixth sense. Through something far more specific. A study out of Kyoto University began pulling on this thread in 2015, and what they found remains one of the clearest windows into how your dog decides who to trust and who to quietly add to its watch list. In 2015, Kyoto University researcher Akiko Takaoka ran a simple experiment. One dog in a room, two containers, a person points to one, there's food inside. The dog runs over, finds it. Great. Trust established. Second round, the same person points to the other container. The dog runs over. Empty. Third round, the person points again. This time, there's actually food inside. And the dog just stops, looks at the person, looks at the container, doesn't move. Takaoka tested 34 dogs. All 34 did the same thing. Not most of them. Every single one. Do you think that's a coincidence? Of course it isn't. What made this interesting wasn't the refusal itself. It was what happened next. For the fourth round, Takaoka brought in a completely new person. Same container, same food, a new human points. The dogs followed immediately. They hadn't lost faith in pointing as a concept. They hadn't experienced some general anxiety or shutdown. They had filed a specific complaint about a specific person and then moved on without carrying it. Takaoka told the BBC she was surprised by how quickly dogs devalued a person's trustworthiness. Her word. One trial, one broken gesture, that was enough. John Bradshaw from the University of Bristol, who wasn't part of the study, added something worth sitting with. Dogs don't prefer consistency just because it feels comfortable. Inconsistency actively stresses them out. When someone behaves unpredictably, what your dog feels isn't confusion. It's a threat response. The body reads chaos the same way it reads danger. Your dog isn't judging that person morally. It's not interested in them. Your dog's only concern is protecting itself from a pattern that doesn't make sense. But here's what the Takaoka study couldn't answer, and what a second team at Kyoto set out to investigate just a few months later. Is your dog tracking behavior, or something closer to intent? In 2015, researcher Hitomi Chijiwa set up a different scenario. A dog watches its owner try to open a container and ask a nearby stranger for help. In one version, the stranger helps. In another, the stranger turns away, refuses, looks at the ground. A third person is nearby, completely neutral the entire time. After the interaction, both the stranger and the neutral person offer the dog a treat. When the stranger helped the owner, the dogs took the treat from both people. No preference. Everyone's fine. When the stranger refused to help, the dogs walked right past the treat being offered to them, past the food, and went to the neutral person instead. I want you to think about that for a moment. The stranger hadn't done anything to the dog. No threat, no raised voice, no sudden movement. The dog had simply watched someone be unkind to its person. And that was enough. Rocky did something like this once. Rocky is my incredibly sweet dog, by the way. A friend of mine had quit their job and blamed me for it. We had a small argument about it, nothing serious or major. But there was a slight tension in the air. Rocky, who normally approaches every new person like he owes them something, spent the rest of that visit curled up at my feet. He didn't go near that person once. I noticed it at the time, but didn't think much of it. Reading this research, that day suddenly came back to me, and it genuinely felt different. I'm sure something like this has happened to you too, and I'd love it if you shared it with me in the comments. I really enjoy reading memories like that. The researchers called what they documented third-party emotional evaluation, the ability to assess someone's character by watching how they treat others. At the time it was published, it had never been documented in a non-primate species. But the part that stayed with me is this. The dogs didn't reward the helpful stranger. They punished the unhelpful one. The one who helped got nothing extra. The one who refused was excluded. The researchers called this negativity bias. Bad behavior outweighs good behavior. And thinking about it from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes complete sense. Knowing who to stay away from keeps you alive. Knowing who to thank was a luxury your ancestors couldn't always afford. Your dog doesn't care who's generous. It keeps a very specific list of people who refuse to help you, and that list doesn't expire easily. So your dog is tracking trustworthiness. It's tracking kindness shown toward you. But there's a third layer, and this is the hardest one to explain. A team from the University of Vienna wanted to investigate something that seemed almost too specific to test. Can a dog tell the difference between someone who is wrong and someone who is lying? It seemed impossible to me. How could a dog possibly know? Both situations end up pulling the dog into the same event. But dogs know these two things aren't the same. Here's the setup. One person hides a reward in one of two buckets. A second person then moves the reward to the other bucket. In one condition, the first person watches this happen. They know exactly where the reward is. In the other condition, the first person leaves the room during the switch. They genuinely don't know. They have no idea it was moved. Both come back. Both point to the original bucket, the empty one. From the outside, the instruction looks the same. Someone is pointing to the wrong bucket, but what the dog witnessed leading up to that moment is completely different. When the person watched the switch and still pointed to the wrong bucket, meaning they pointed wrong on purpose. The dogs were far more likely to ignore them and find the reward themselves. When the person left the room and genuinely didn't know, when they were wrong but not lying, the dogs followed the point more often. They showed something very close to giving the benefit of the doubt. The researchers noted that breed played a role here. Retrievers and border collies, dogs historically selected for close cooperation with humans, were exceptional at detecting deception. Terrier breeds, having been bred to work independently and make their own calls in places no human could supervise, formed the one group that followed the lie more often, which honestly makes sense. A terrier trusting everyone equally despite red flags isn't a flaw in its reading ability. It's the product of centuries of breeding that said, "I'll figure it out myself." Now, I want to be honest with you here because the research doesn't all point in one direction. In 2023, a team led by researcher Patrizia Piotta published a study examining whether dogs form reputation judgments after watching humans interact with other dogs. Not their own dog, just dogs in general. They tested whether witnessing a selfish or generous person changed which human the dog approached afterward. It didn't. No preference. Dogs appeared indifferent to how a stranger treated some other dog they had no connection to. Piotti was careful not to dismiss the earlier findings. She pointed out that the scenarios where dogs did show evaluation, Chijiwa's study, Takaoka's study, involved either a direct lie told to the dog or an injustice done to someone the dog actually knew and cared about. Remove that personal stake, make the scenario abstract, and the signal may not be strong enough to trigger a response. That gives you something more useful than a clean answer. Your dog probably isn't running background checks on strangers at the park. But at home, with your people, when the social dynamics genuinely matter to them, that's when the evaluation kicks in. And when it does, it isn't vague. It's specific, fast, and lasting. So if your dog has ever refused to warm up to someone everyone else seems perfectly fine with, don't dismiss it too quickly. Your dog isn't caught up in an empty feeling. It's responding to a pattern. Something in that person's body, their scent, or the way they interact with you was inconsistent, and your dog noticed it before you had the language to name it. That doesn't mean your dog is always right. It's working with real data, but it's still an animal reading a complex social world with a system built for survival. Sometimes the tense person is just tense. Sometimes the person moving sharply just has a bad knee. But when the dog that trusts everyone, the one that drags you towards strangers on walks, the one that has never met a delivery driver it didn't like, suddenly goes quiet and sits down beside you, I'd suggest taking that seriously. Not because your dog is psychic, but because your dog has been paying very close attention to people for a very long time. And it just flagged something. Something the thousands of years it spent by our side taught it to take seriously. What your dog is doing in that moment isn't fear. It's memory. Pattern recognition running on hardware older than language, and it's been doing it every single time for you. And it always will. Now tell me your dog's name and share a memory. And don't miss my next video. It's about a fascinating mystery involving dogs. See you there.